Okay, so good morning to all of you. Good morning. Okay, how's everyone doing? Good. Okay. All right. We'll get into, let's start with probably to understand what did we do last time? What did we focus on last time?
Counseling the abused.
Counseling, yes, counseling the abused. And we did one more thing.
About grief.
Yes, we did grief counseling as well. Okay, so any points that you remember when we're looking at counseling the abused? What are some points that you remember that we have focused on?
Physical abuse, sexual abuse,
Okay.
emotional.
Phys-
Emotional.
yes, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, as well as one more thing we spoke about, right? We said neglect as well, right? That is also a form of abuse, we said. Okay. Some thoughts about when there is abuse, what do we focus on? How do we manage? How do we take care of the situation? Yeah. How do we take care of a situation?
We protect them by not letting them go back to the situation, same
Yeah.
situation.
Thank you, Lucy. Yeah. So we ensure that we don't push them back into the same situation. All right. Then what else did we say? What else?
In case of sexual abuse, we find the details of the abuse and ensure to report to the family and the concerned department.
Okay. Thank you. Is there only Lucy in this class? What happened to the rest of the people? Come on, students. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Lucy. Okay. What about grief? I want some of my students over here to respond. What about grief? Grief. What about grief? Okay, so normal grief is between 3 to 6 months, yeah. And the, sorry? Louder. What is grief? Is any form of loss? Is that what you said? Very good. Okay. Then? Then? To be with the person who's grieving. Okay. To just ensure your presence with them. Okay. What will you, is there anything that you will say to them? Is there anything that you will say to them? Okay. So it may be just enough to listen to them. Okay. All right. Okay. So we will go to another section today, which is on suicide. I'll be just taking 1 hour today. All right. So we won't be having 2 classes. We'll just be having 1 hour today. All right. We're going to be looking at suicide. Okay. How many of you all were present for the mentoring hour on suicide? Were you all present for the mentoring hour on suicide? Some of you were. Yeah. Okay. So it's actually a kind of a repeat, but nevertheless, let's look at some of this. All right. So, what is the term suicide? When you hear about the term suicide, what does it bring up for you? Sorry? Killing themselves? Okay. All right. Fearful people, you said? Huh? Okay. What does it bring up for you when you hear suicide?
Putting, putting up an end for all of their problems with that mindset.
Putting an end to their problems, a kind of a mindset that
They have.
they're putting an end to their problem. Okay. Sorry? Blackmailing, is it? Who, sorry? Blackmail, that's what you're saying. Yeah. They are committing suicide to blackmail. Is that what you said? Okay. All right. So maybe because of some kind of circumstance that they are in, that they actually, okay, situation that brings them there. All right. Anything else? Running away from life. Okay. What about the others? Okay, thinking that if they die, everything would be normal. All right. Any online students? Any thoughts? What does the word suicide bring to you? What is it? What is it? What do you think of when you hear the word suicide? What's the first thing that you think of?
Sisters, you're not able to face the world.
Unable to face
Then
the world. Okay, that all hope is lost. Okay, end to all problems. Sorry, what did you say, Mama? Failure. Okay, all right. So it's first of all important for us to know and understand what we think about suicide in itself, right? So what is, how do we understand what suicide is? So I just want to bring a couple of facts of understanding of what suicide is. So remember that everyone has the potential of giving up their life, okay? Because of the kind of, just as sin entered into the world, the mind becomes a lot captured with the cares and the worries and the things that are there, right? So maybe it can be of our own doing, sin being of our own doing. It can be as a result of someone else's sin over us. It can be the work of the enemy. There can be many reasons why someone, that each of us could have the potential of committing suicide, okay? We need to understand that suicide occurs across all kinds of class and all kinds of people. It's just not the poorer class or the richer class or the middle class. It can happen to anyone. So it occurs in every group, in every kind of economic status, in every kind of ethnic group, in any kind of race. It's something that can hit anybody. So globally, when you're looking at, all over the world, it's as close to 8 lakhs of people who die by suicide every year. And the number is a lot more for those who attempt it. So what do we mean by attempt? Attempting suicide is someone who's attempted it, but it's not become a complete success. That is, they survive, but they could survive completely as they did before, or it can be it could be with some kind of a debilitation, with some kind of a result of the suicidal act. So there are, when you look at it, when you look at the statistics, in every 40 seconds there's one person who is committing suicide. Okay, the rate in India is it's 14 lakhs per population, per 14.04 per lakh of people. That is 14.04 people out of 1 lakh are the ones who commit suicide. This is a 2019 research that was done. And the most vulnerable people, the age group is generally between 15 and 35 years. All right. However, there are older adults also who may commit suicide. So we need to remember that it is something that is very, very prevalent, and something that is very, very thing that you see over any kind of a population. All right. So in a statistic in 2022, I don't know if you're interested in it, but there were 170,000 deaths due to suicides just in India in 2022. And there may have been more that were reported, but that have not been reported, okay, that actually go without a reporting. All right, so let's just look at some of the terms. So the meaning of the word suicide is basically injuring oneself with the intent to die, okay? Whereas suicide attempt is the harm that one inflicts on their person to end life, but does not result in death. It's an attempt. They would have liked to. It's only an attempt, but it is not a successful attempt. And the suicidal thoughts are the ideas or the constant thoughts that come about ending life. So we should just remember some of these terms. So suicide, suicidal attempt, as well as the thoughts that come in suicide. Okay, all right. Now let's look at maybe some, just to understand what are some misconceptions of suicide and what do people think it is. So a lot of times people think that suicide happens without a warning, which is not true. There are maybe very many ways or things that people do in some way, give a clue or give an inkling about their desperation. All right, so it's either in their conversation or it's either in their behavior. It's in some way that you may have a clue about the person going to commit suicide. It just doesn't happen all of a sudden, at least not a large percentage of which we will talk about. Okay, people who attempt suicide want to die. Rather than wanting to die, a lot of times they just want that emotional pain to end, to drop, right? So it's more because of the overwhelm that they are feeling that they tend to attempt or commit suicide, more than saying, you know, it's for death. It's the goal is for death. The goal actually is the emotional pain is so overwhelming that they want to get rid of that pain, and that's why the choice of death. Okay. Another misconception that's often there is that those who commit suicide, who talk about suicide, won't really do it. Right? Someone who keeps saying, I'm going to die or I'm going to commit suicide, won't really do it. And this generally happens because you may see, like Vimal said, blackmail. You know, people blackmail and say, you know, if you're not going to marry me, I'm going to go die. Right? Now, there are some of those things that we may need to take up seriously. Some of the things that we know tends to be a personality issue, tends to be something like a manipulation. But we need to understand that people who, especially those who are depressed or those who are going through significant mental health conditions and want to commit suicide, they actually do talk about it. They really say, and they will actually, when you ask them, they will actually tell you that they want to do it. Okay, all individuals who commit suicide are mentally ill. So it's not always true, but most of them have depression. Actually, a large number of people who commit suicide have depression, and that's why, because of their distress and their despair, is why they want to commit suicide. Okay, talking about suicide may give someone the idea. What do you think? I want to hear this. Talking about suicide, if you're going to ask someone, I ask and say, here, do you feel like killing yourself, or are you suicidal? It gives them the idea that they will have the idea to go commit suicide. Is that true or false? What do you think?
False.
Okay, some said false, some said true. Okay, so tell me why you say true. They will have some thoughts. Okay, so you're saying that if we talk about it, they will have thoughts to do it. No. I'm saying if you as a person were to ask someone, are you thinking of committing suicide? It will give them the idea to commit suicide. So is that true or false?
False.
Okay. Yeah. So it's always better. In fact, when you are talking to people, especially those who are depressed, those who are very maybe severe anxiety, severe stress, actually talking about it helps them to articulate it, right? Helps them to know that someone's caring and someone is aware, and it helps them to actually address that topic. So talking about suicide is not the dangerous thing. It's not something that they will feel afraid of or that they will do, right? It is a good thing. It is in fact recommended that whenever you're talking to people who seem very depressed, upset, asking this question actually can help them to share and in fact keep them away from attempting a suicide. Okay, all right. Only experts can stop a suicide. Is that true? If someone were to talk to you, you're saying, no, I'm not an expert. Yeah, go ahead.
I think
Natasha.
friends, having friends whom you can discuss with, talk to will help a lot.
Yeah, right. So yes, anyone can stop a suicide. What you need to do is to be a listener, to care, to to be able to provide hope. That's what a lot of people can just do that, or just showing that support, saying that, hey, I am with you here. We will get this. We will figure this out together. All of that actually helps the person. All right. Next one. People who are suicidal don't talk about it. That's false. They do. They actually give a lot of clues behind. Okay. When a suicidal person's depression improves, he or she is out of danger. Is that true? So
May not be true. Something could just trigger suddenly.
Yeah. So if, let's say, a person has suicidal thoughts or may have had an attempt and maybe their depression is come down, in fact, studies do show that they are more at risk to commit suicide in the next 3 months. Okay, so that's why there should be support, should be help that's given to them, especially after maybe the attempt or maybe at a significant point of depression, to walk along with them for at least 3 to 6 months till there is some form of a stability that's there. So that's kind of important to understand. Okay, so what are some of the risks that we need to think about? What are the risk factors of suicide? What do you think? What are some risk factors? In the sense, how would you identify that someone is at risk to commit suicide? How would you know? What are some factors that you need to keep in mind?
A way of expressing their things.
1 minute. Lucy, sorry, what did you say? They will do? Very good. Yes, absolutely. So he said they will do all the settlements, which is true, especially for those who have been contemplating suicide for a long time. They would have settled many things. Like, let's say, if it is the breadwinner of the family, they would have settled some loans or settled some payments, or ensure that all the they may take term insurances. They may write all the name, whatever their assets in the name of maybe their next kith of kin. Yeah, they may write a will. Yes, right. So especially those who contemplate for a long period of time, this is often seen. Especially those with a kind of a depression. Excellent. That's great. Okay. What else? So someone who's had a previous suicidal attempt is at a greater risk for another attempt. So someone who's already contemplated as well as maybe tried is at risk. Okay. Someone who has depression, clinical depression, is at risk of committing suicide. Someone who has addiction to alcohol, addiction to drugs, severe addiction can lead to depression. All right. Other factors are family history. If there is someone within the family who's already committed suicide, it is a risk for the members of the family. It is a risk for the person. If there are childhood abuse, childhood trauma that happens, could be sexual abuse, could be emotional abuse, could be some form of significant distress in childhood, can lead to, again, significant depressive symptoms, which again can lead to suicide. All right. Or long-standing relationship problems, maybe issues in the marriage, issues in the family for significant periods of time can have suicidal attempts. Or crisis, let's say, complete bankruptcy.
Farmers
The-
in India
yeah,
face
farmers.
problems.
Yes,
Mm.
right. So all those kind of crises can also be one of a general risk factor that we may need to be considerate about. Or people going through some major life change, sudden life change, can those kind of people could also be at risk of suicide. Okay, chronic illness, when people are going through, let's say, some form of an illness that continues to keep, that there isn't any kind of a respite, that also can lead to depression. Then also is uh, any form of an isolation, like let's say people who are more to themselves, more close to themselves, like social isolates, those who are socially isolating themselves over periods of time are also at risk of suicide. Okay? All right. Are you all with me, class? Everyone is okay.
Yes,
Ma'am, you
teacher.
said,
Yeah?
sorry, you
Yes.
said people who feel isolated. Is
Yeah.
someone else talking? Okay. Could it be that they isolate themselves because they realize no one is going to help them, or they're not finding help from anyone?
Yeah. So the isolation sometimes can happen because of depression in itself.
Yeah.
Right? One of the core symptoms of depression is social withdrawal. So that can
Mm.
happen with the isolation can happen as a result of that also. So they tend to withdraw themselves into a shell and do not uh, seek help. And so that's one of the reasons why the isolation can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gertrude, you were saying something, please? Were you saying something?
You were saying that we are not listening. We are listening, teacher.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay. Now, I was asking my students over here. I know all of you all are listening. Some of my students are keeping eye-to-eye contact, but I think they are somewhere else. Okay. So when you're looking at different circumstances of people committing suicide, like I said, just to give you like a percentage of what are generally the causes. So 50%, 50 to 60% of people commit suicide because of depression, because of the mental health. 33%, the circumstances could be these history of suicidal thoughts, just these anxious thoughts leading to suicide. That's 33%. 31% of them commit suicide as a result of a crisis, because of some past crisis that's happened in probably 2 weeks of time. 27% of them commit suicide because of intimate relationship issues, husband, wife, romantic relationships, parent-child, all of that. 23% because of physical health problems. Okay, maybe they're going through some major physical health problems. 18% because of alcohol dependence. 17% because of drugs. And 10% because of job losses. All right, or financial kind of issues is what generally the trend is that you would see. Okay. Now, people who are considering suicide, that we need to look at some warning signs of those who may be committing suicide. How can we pick up? How do we know? How do we recognize people who may be at a risk? So the first one is this feeling of hopelessness. What does hopelessness look like? What do you think hopelessness looks like? What is hopelessness?
It's like end of the road.
Yeah, hopeless, yes, end of the road, or the feeling that it's only doom. It's only, everything is bad. They can't see any light. It's only darkness. Right? There isn't any hope at all. I've lost all hope. There isn't anything to look forward to. That's what is hopelessness, that it's so bad that life will not get any better. So it's that feelings of hopelessness that generally drives people to suicide. The other feeling is worthlessness. What does worthlessness mean? Worthlessness.
I don't have any value in anyone's eyes.
Absolutely. What do you say, Vimal? Not able to do anything, you said? Yeah. So the fact that I am worth nothing, I have absolutely no meaning, I have absolutely no worth in anything that I do. That feeling of worthlessness makes you feel that everything's empty. There is no point of you having to live. So these are, especially these two feelings of hopelessness and worthlessness, are very common among those, a common warning sign of those who commit suicide. All right. What are some of the actions? So one, we spoke about the feelings. Next, we're talking about actions. How do we notice that people who may, what are the signs, what are some of the action, signs of behavior that could move them into suicide? One is drug or alcohol use. That is constant usage of alcohol or constant usage of drugs. It is basically, they are trying to suppress that feeling of hopelessness and worthlessness and trying to down their concerns or drown their thoughts in alcohol or in drugs. Okay? Yeah? Okay. There can be recklessness. What is recklessness? Reckless. What is the meaning of recklessness?
Taking risk.
Yes, taking risks, driving at high speeds, doing risk-taking things like, for example, especially those who use drugs, risk behavior is when they're sharing needles, right? It's a huge risk because you can be infected, or you can get into a lot of physical health issues, right? Or other kind of risk, doing other risky, dangerous things, driving at high speeds, jumping off high spaces to just see, because they don't care, right? So these are some of the actions that you would notice. What are some of the changes you will see? You will see personality changes. You will begin to see that they are not able to concentrate. They are becoming very withdrawn. They're becoming tired. They're not able to care about anything. All of that can take place. Even sleeping and eating patterns become difficult. They're not sleeping well. They're not eating well. A lot of those changes happen. You do find that they're losing interest in friends, in activities, in work. All of that can take place. All right. Next is, there may be threats. They may be making statements, or they may be making certain, bring about certain thoughts that can seem alarming, like questions like, how long does it take to bleed to death? Or how long will it take to die if I consume this? So those are all give you indications that these could be some kind of threats. Or they make plans, like we said, plans of giving away their favorite things, or getting a weapon, or planning a specific action plan in order to commit suicide. So these are some part of those situations. And lastly are, you may actually find that they're getting into trouble at work, they're getting into trouble at school. There may be certain changes in life that seems extremely overwhelming. They're more exposed to things that are difficult. Okay, so these are some of the warning signs that you will need to look for. Okay, but even as we're looking at these warning signs, we also want to look at what are some factors that can protect people of committing suicide. What are some protective factors? Okay, so what are protective factors? When you look at the word protective factors, what are some factors that are likely to keep them safe, or something that reduces the attempt of committing suicide? All right, okay. So what do you think are some protective factors? I want you all to think. My class over here, you all are very sleepy, or you all are not here. and it's very evident. Yeah. So what are some protective factors? Come on.
Excuse me, madam.
Yeah.
I understand as Christian counselors, we need to know that. But a lot of people don't go for counseling, those who are going to commit suicide.
Right.
These things, shouldn't the family and the public in general know about these things?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it is. And that's exactly why maybe we as students need to identify this even in our own congregations. Because suicide is not something that's only applicable to those outside, right? You see it even in church. You see it even in people who may be believers, who may be Christians, who are contemplating this. So that's why it's important for us to really identify some of these signs and do as best as we can to bring people to a place of safety, or to even bring people to be able to talk about this. Okay? Yeah. So what do you think are some protective factors? Yes, a good social network, whether it be family, whether it be friends, whether it be church. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. All right. That's one. What else? Huh? Good? Good thinking. Yeah. So those who are able to resolve conflicts and stress better, it is a protective factor. So when you're saying good thinking, it's more about whenever there are pressures in life, how are you able to manage it? So what are some of your ways of dealing with tensions and stress and challenges in life? Actually is a good protective factor. It's called resilience, right? Resilience is think of resilience like a rubber band. When you stretch a rubber band, right, it's going up to the greatest tension, right? But when you leave it, what happens? It comes back to its same shape. That's what resilience is, right? Even though we are stretched, resilience is actually coming back to a similar shape. Even though the crisis or the situation actually causes a stretching in our lives, resilience is about coming back to that same space of functioning. Okay, what are the other important factors? Come on. Something we learn in Bible college. What is it? Our beliefs, our faith, right? Faith and beliefs are a big factor. A lot of people, it discourages a lot of people from committing suicide because of what they believe, right? And especially of the Christian faith, where we believe that God is the one who gives life, He's the one who's going to take away. We have no authority over it. That in itself becomes such a protective factor for people. Right? We may not understand it, but it is. I mean, when you talk to people, you understand that, I know God wouldn't want me to do this. Even though I feel like it, I know, it's not right in the eyes of God. And that becomes a protective factor in itself. All right? Okay. What else? What are the other protective factors? Asapu.
Would you say
Just,
some deviation?
Sorry?
Would you say some deviations or something like making them to change their thought process by deviating their mind to something else
That would
rather
all
than
come
discussing?
that would all come under what we spoke about earlier, saying that being able to managing stress and challenges, that would come under that. Okay. One of the biggest protective factor is having some purpose and meaning in life. Right? When you know that you have a certain purpose, or there is something you are called to do, you preserve your life. Like, let's say, a young mother, maybe very depressed, but just thinking about the children keeps her from committing suicide. Or let's say a breadwinner, thinking about the family keeps them from doing it. Maybe it's a parent, or so just the purpose that they may have. that keeps them away from doing it. So these are all certain protective factors that we need to, we want to build up so that people can find some respite in and through the challenges that they may face. Okay. All right. Okay. So we'll spend the next 10-15 minutes on what can we do to help. What is it that we do to help, especially those who are contemplating suicide? One of the most important things is to learn, to build awareness. And like Natasha said, isn't it important that the families and the regular, the society needs to know? Yes, it is to learn, build awareness, understand those risk factors, understand these protective factors that actually either get people at risk for suicide or are actually protecting them. Okay? So it is to learn. And that's why this is important for us to understand what is suicide, how does it look like, how do I recognize someone who may be at risk, what are the protective factors that I can take care of. These are some things that's very important. So learning these signs is very, very important. Okay?
Isn't it important that, like for instance, in our church, the youth group, when they meet once in a while, have topics like that where you discuss and give hope and not to give up, or in schools, wherever people generally meet, just to have this, because this also is like a taboo. People want to keep away from someone who's looking depressed and all that.
Yes, absolutely. Right? Yeah. So it is, I'm coming to that next point, is to get comfortable in discussing about suicide, whether it be in your family, with the children, with people at home, with your employees, with students, with the church, with the society. It's to get comfortable in talking about it. That there is absolutely nothing wrong to talk about this, because if you are uncomfortable, others will also be uncomfortable talking about it. So actually opening it up as a conversation is really, really important of what you can do. Right? So being more aware and building that awareness and making even others aware. The next is to be willing to listen to people, willing to listen to where they are, the struggles that they may be going through, whatever they are experiencing, validating, acknowledging their feelings, their thoughts is very, very important. In our fast-paced life, we generally don't have time. Isn't it? We don't have time to listen to somebody. We don't take the space out to just encourage somebody, especially those who may be at great risk. Like, let's say someone who is undergoing depression. Just giving them a call once in a while to talk to them helps, right? Or maybe at some point of time, just going and visiting them. Or let's say, someone has gone through a severe crisis, calling them up, praying with them. These are all ways that you can listen and you can validate. Okay? Now, sometimes when people do open up to you and say that they are feeling suicidal, all right, never promise confidentiality there. So you remember the principle of confidentiality which we learned in the first? What is the only time that you breach it? You remember? What is it?
Life is at risk.
Yeah. Sorry, what did you say?
Life is at risk.
Yeah, Natasha, thank you. There's a student here saying something. Yeah. Okay, right. So when they are at risk to themselves or somebody else is the only time you will breach confidentiality. Okay, now that doesn't mean you go tell the whole world that they are suicidal. What it means is you may need to get someone close to them or some support they have to ensure that they are safe. All right. So even when they say, I'm going to tell you something, don't tell anybody, you may need to tell them, when it comes to your risk to your life, this is something I may need to get somebody's support or help for, because you're not living with them. You're not sharing the same space with them, right? So you may not be able to keep them safe. So it's important not to be sworn into secrecy when someone is feeling suicidal. Now, it doesn't mean that when they're telling you, hey, I'm feeling suicidal, you go straight on to say, okay, I have to tell somebody else. Wait, right? What you need to do is to respond. You need to listen. You need to be there. Show that you are concerned. Show that you care. All right. So being there to validate, being there to listen without giving any kind of a judgment or without giving any kind of statements like, if you kill yourself, what will happen to your children? Do you know if you kill yourself, you will go to hell? Do you know that you're going to displease God if you kill yourself? Now, all of these may be true, but that's not the right time to bring that up, right? Because you don't want to add guilt to already what the person is going through. Because when you're going to be saying this, there's going to be additional guilt that's going to be thrown in at them. But there is a time to validate, time to really acknowledge what they may be going through. Okay? So never promise that confidentiality. It's always good to ask directly. If you have an inkling that they are feeling like that, ask them directly. I just wanted to know, do you have these thoughts of killing yourself? Ask directly, because sometimes you may be that only one person who's actually asked, and gives them that freedom to actually open up and talk. Okay. Next is, in case people do say they're going to commit suicide, never dare them. Say, okay, let's see how you'll do it. Go. Why don't you go do it and show me? Never dare. Never dare them, right? Because sometimes there are people who are impulsive, and they could just, not because they have thought about it, but because it's become like a dare, it can just happen. So never dare people to do that. All right. Always calm them and say, I see that you're in a lot of pain. I see that you're going through something. I'm here to talk to you about it. Let's discuss this. Let's talk this, rather than say, okay, let's go. Let me see how that can be done. So never dare. All right. Okay. Stay with them and support them. Or get support if you sense they are in danger. All right. Like, let's say it's a friend you're talking to and you know that they're suicidal. They're saying, this evening when I'm going back, I'm planning to do this. Hold on to them or get help and get some support so that they can be physically present with someone. Okay. It's important to ensure that. You could, the help that you can get is get help from a family. You can get help from a doctor, from a counselor. Okay. In all of this, pray alongside with them. Bring hope. All right. And just bring hope, bring healing, bring protection as you continue to do that, as you continue to pray with them. Okay. What do you not do? There's some things that we have to think about not doing. What do you not say, or what do you not do? It is because they are in such an intense situation, you do not have to solve their problems for them. They may be talking about a certain problem. You don't have to solve that problem. You're just there to listen, to validate, and to help them see that you are this. Because when you're trying to resolve or bring about something, you're also going to be showing that, oh, there is nothing that we can do about this. You're in an extremely difficult situation, right? So it's not about you resolving their issue, and don't try to do that. Don't try to cheer them or distract them either. Don't say, oh, come on, let's be happy. You have so many things to thank. You had food, you have air to breathe. Don't distract them. They are going through pain. Stick alongside with them through that, okay? Don't compare your experience with theirs. Don't say, oh, even I felt suicidal 10 years ago and this is how I overcame. It is not about you. It's about them. It's about continuously validating and helping them through that situation. Also, don't guilt trip them. Don't bring about guilt so much, like we said, right? That, what's God going to think about you? What's your family going to do? Do you know you'll put everyone to shame? What kind of a witness are you? What kind of a testimony are you? Don't guilt trip them. Okay? They are in a pain. walk alongside with them in that pain. Okay, so these are some things that you would focus on with them. I'm just going to stop here briefly before one or two things that I have to say, and then we'll close. Yeah, so any questions up this far?
Ma'am, any insights about people who are having the split second thought of suicide, and is there any way that you can intervene?
Yeah, so those sometimes are what we call issues with their personality, right? There are some personality disorders where they are very emotionally unstable, and that emotional instability can bring them into impulsively doing things that they may not have planned or may not have decided themselves. But the impulse can be so severe that they succumb. So people with personality issues will definitely show struggles in relationships, show struggles in day-to-day activities, show struggles in emotional regulation, and they need help. They need help, and you don't get them help only when there is a crisis. They should have had help right from for extended periods of time. It's not only just when there is a crisis, but they are harder to detect because they are quite impulsive in the way that they may decide on certain things.
And one last question is like, within the Christian fraternity or a congregation, you sense or somebody's opened up to you. So do you at least try to bring it to the notice of the pastor without the knowledge of the person?
Preferably not without the knowledge of the person. With the knowledge of the person is good.
Okay.
Letting them know that you are letting maybe the pastor or some leadership team know so they can be of support and help. Better not to do it without their consent. The consent that you really need is to get them help for immediate family. Is something that you need to do even if they don't give you a consent. But for those outside of that core group, is a consent that may be better that you take. Okay? Yeah. All right. Any other question? All right. So we'll go on to just a few thoughts about families. How do you deal with families of those who have committed suicide? Okay. You should remember, now going back to some part of what we did at grief, it is in addition to their grief, they are dealing with many conflicting emotions, questions, blame, embarrassment, shame, a lot of this, right? Because especially when someone dies of suicide, because of the stigma that's there around it, families go through a whole lot of setback. They go through a whole lot of pain. And there's a huge amount of guilt and self-incrimination, okay, about what they could have done differently. They begin to blame themselves, and they keep thinking about, if only I had done this, if only I had taken care of this, this wouldn't have happened. So you need to be careful that you don't make wrong use of this kind of an information that they may be sharing. Okay, don't feel tempted to rush and fix their feelings. It's okay that they're going through this. There may be many unanswered questions. Stick with them, stay with them, just support them through what they may be feeling. It's all right to say, maybe sometimes when they ask difficult questions, that some of those answers are difficult. Maybe that may not be the right time to discuss something like, for example, will this person go to hell or heaven, right? Maybe at that intense sense of grief, it's good to just pass off that question by saying, I know these are difficult, hard questions, and it can be very conflicting in the way that you're feeling about it. But to talk about this later when they have actually settled a little bit with their grief is when these difficult, important questions can be spoken about. Okay? Practice empathy. Empathy is a big thing, especially for those who are in this state, right? To stick with them, to support them, to be with them, to experience their significant pain through all of this. Okay. Now, even as you're dealing with someone who has committed suicide or who has attempted, it's important for you to check in on yourself, because it can be extremely overwhelming when someone has died of suicide and you're trying to be a support to a family. It can be very, very draining for you. Okay. So it is crucial to take care of yourself, to come to a place of talking with someone, getting into the presence of the Lord, really seeking that help and seeking that comfort from him. So it's very needed, even as a counselor, as a pastor, or as a ministry leader, anyone dealing with this part of life of suicide or families of suicide, it's important to get that support and that strength as you're walking along. Okay? All right. Any other thoughts? Anything else?
Sister, above the age of 70, during the corona period, many were there who committed suicide after going through the sickness or illness.
Yeah.
Was it due to the depression, or they were because of their being kept little bit of loneliness?
It could be many things. It could be a mixture of things. It is true that a lot of people, especially during COVID, depression and anxiety went up so high, and the fact that there wasn't any other space except the home to deal with whatever those intense emotions were, right? That probably has been, the depression could have gone up a lot more higher. No sense of hope, worthlessness would have probably come up, and that's why, that the explanation of people having committed suicide then, because depression and anxiety went up a lot higher at that time.
Even though of much care and love shown to them.
Yeah. See, depression is not because of a lack of love, right? Depression is a clinical condition. So even if a person undergoing significant depression, even though you may have all of this kind of support systems and love, they are clinically depressed and they require clinical support and clinical help, right? So even I'm not saying it's a good protective factor, but for someone who is already in significant depression, they definitely may need medical help as well.
Okay, sister. Thank you.
All right. Okay. We'll stop today. We will not be having the second hour. We have our next class, which is 2 hours, and then we will finish our portions. You will be given an assessment by the end of this week. Please make sure that you do it before April 25th. Okay. Yes, Sam, you had a question?
Yeah, actually, I didn't know we were not having the second hour, so I thought I'll just ask a question on suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
What I've noticed is, especially for people who are spiritually strong, like you would say, but suddenly has gone into this. It's very they know the spiritual truth, and it's very hard to kind of even sometimes I don't even entertain that. Reading the Bible or praying together.
Right.
So what would you what is the approach, especially those times, because they were spiritually strong and now suddenly just don't want to do anything to do with that because of the season they're in.
So Sam, in things like this, the first thing that we would need to look at is to assess them for clinical depression. See, clinical depression is a very, it's like a black cloud, right? It's so intense that any form of hope or any form of courage that may come gets dampened because of the significant symptoms, especially those who are undergoing severe depression. And the classic symptoms of depression is loss of interest in anything that they had found hope or pleasure in, a lack of motivation, a significant form of despair and hopelessness. These are clinical symptoms. So when someone who has had a good history of a spiritual walk with God, and because of the season that they are in, maybe significant depression, it's something for us to take note of. When there is a normalcy that you see and suddenly everything just goes off, it's a red flag that it can be clinical depression. And that's why an evaluation and assessment is necessary to understand that. Because with some form of medical formal help, it can be boosted back. They can come back to that place of spiritual oneness. Okay? So if at any point of time you see a person functioning well or functioning adequately well, and suddenly there is a zero in everything, it should raise your concerns about them needing medical support and medical help.
Got it. So in those cases, it's more of the medical side where we need to really
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Till a point that they are a little bit more, they have recovered a bit, through whatever support they got, and then getting them back at a time. Because when a person is really down in the dumps, to actually encourage them to do something that seems heavily difficult becomes a larger burden on them. So identifying that they may be in a state where they need medical support, giving them that support, and then getting them back into what has helped earlier is what we need to do.
Yeah.
It's an indicator.
Got
Yeah.
it. Thanks.
Okay. All right.
Sister,
Yeah.
also, with some people just appear as normal without showing any kind of means symptoms outside.
Yeah.
How can we identify such people? Like,
That's what I said. There may be certain people with personality issues that creates this, right? And it may not be as easy to identify, especially those with personality issues, especially those who are extremely impulsive. It may be hard. So there is a percentage of people who do not really express signs of it, but just through, again, they may also not attempt things that are lethal. Like, you have an idea about, for example, a certain number of tablets will cause you death. It may not, they may just take 2-3 of it just out of the impulsivity of it. It's not that they intended it, but then they just wanted, some calming down. So even their intentions may not be as heavy as someone who's already contemplating.
okay, sister. Thank you.
All right. Okay. All right. Shall we just close with a word of prayer? Heavenly Father, we thank you that you are using each one of us for important assignments and tasks, Lord. Father, even as we come in contact with people who may be hurting, Lord, give us the wisdom to support, to help, to guide them through difficult situations. Lord, we pray, God, for Lord, for people of God, especially who may be going through depressive symptoms and anxiety issues, God. Lord, that the power of God, the love of God, the sweet embrace of God would touch them and bring healing into their minds, into their hearts, into their lives. Father, use us as instruments of your love and, Lord, of your unconditional acceptance. God, I pray, God, that all of us sitting here, Lord, in any season of our lives, that we would not lose hope or be or be in despair, but our hope, Lord, would be from you. Our strength would come from you. Thank you, God, for how you uphold us, Lord, and how you uphold our minds. Thank you for this learning. We pray, God, that we would make good use of this. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, students, thank you. God bless. Thank you.